Andrew, my man, what is up?
Hey, Shane, it's good to be here, brother.
Dude, you're running from hurricanes. What are you?
Yeah,
Dude, that was crazy,
successfully,
man.
successfully.
Yeah. Where'd you end up at? Where'd you land at after
We're
the?
in DC. Actually, full disclosure, we accidentally ended up in DC. It was
Hmm.
business travel that was already scheduled, and then it just happened to be that Hurricane Ian decided to strike at the same time. So we got lucky.
Dude, I got a one of my employees. She's from Kentucky, where I'm from, but she moved to Florida like 2 months ago, and she was so excited. And then this hurricane came. She's like, Florida, it's beautiful with the occasional apocalypse right outside your door. And then our live event company, the one that we partner with, they were right in the way of the storm. It turned directly into them. I had an event in Orlando this week. It got canceled. Like, man, it's just crazy how sometimes as entrepreneurs, things are just outside of your control and you got to make the best of it.
You know what? That's one of the things I love about being an entrepreneur is that we can make the best out of it. When you're an
Mm,
employee, you're just stuck.
stuck.
Right? You're stuck. You got to ask permission. People say yes or no. Your paycheck stops coming in. For us, like we packed up a couple of laptops. We put a couple extra reading books in the bag. We got on an airplane. 2.5 hours later, we're in Washington, D.C.
You're
We
in a different
unload.
universe than a
Yeah.
hurricane. Yeah,
And the
man.
kids are good. And everybody's right back to it, right? The business is
Dude,
running. The kids are happy. Whatever.
I read I was
Beautiful.
reading this morning at the coffee shop. I go have a breakfast at this little local place, and I was literally reading Marcus Aurelius this morning, and it said
Meditation.
oh yeah, man, I
Yeah,
keep a
I'm with
copy
you.
with me,
I'm right
dude.
there with you.
I have like Ryan I heard about this book from Ryan Holiday, and then I got this translation. I own like 7 copies of this. I've been reading it for like 2 or 3 years over and over, and I literally, like, you can see this if you're watching on YouTube, guys, but I write in it so much that I literally can't read it again. I have to go do it again. So I buy a new. I just have a stack of them, and I'm like, all right, time to get to the next one. And this morning it said our inward power reacts to events by accommodating itself to whatever it faces. It pursues its own aims as circumstances allow. It turns obstacles into fuel. And
Yeah.
like, man, I'm telling you, like hurricanes, pandemics, like, dude, you turn that into fuel. Woo! Let me give everybody some context here. Now, we're not going to go too far down this rabbit hole. I'll link to some other of my favorite interviews of yours. I actually heard you for the first time on the Lex Fridman podcast, and I started listening to your podcast, and I was like, man, this is fascinating stuff. So I'll link to some of that to get the full background. But tell everybody about you and what you did before you became an online entrepreneur, man, because you had a very interesting career choice going
Yeah,
on.
man, absolutely. So my name is Andrew Bustamante. I'm a former covert CIA intelligence officer. I spent 7 years living and working undercover with CIA. Met my wife, had our first child, and after having some significant success as what's known as a tandem operational couple. So my wife and I worked the same operations together undercover as a married couple, but still truly married. So I don't want anyone to get confused. We weren't pretending to be married. We were just pretending
You didn't get
everything else.
assigned to each other, and
We
you're
really
like,
do
yeah,
like each other.
there you go. This wasn't one of those like True Lies things where one of you didn't know the other one was a spy or something
Right.
like that, right? Y'all knew what was going on.
Yeah,
So
no briefcases in Chinese restaurants, not for us.
right.
But
Oh
yeah,
man.
and then after the birth of our first child, it became clear to us that the life that we wanted for our family was not consistent with the life that CIA wanted from us. So we had to make a pretty hard decision, and we opted to leave CIA. And in that process, we went full on into the entrepreneur sphere, which we knew nothing about. But it was what was going to allow us to raise our children, be there with them every day, kisses goodnight every good night, every night, and hugs good morning every morning, without having to sacrifice our
Mm.
one chance at parenthood in pursuit of a career that wasn't going to remember us.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
I talked to I got a guy on my sales team. He travels with us, and great guy, and a young buck, and he's got a beautiful lady, and they were just young and in love, having a good time, man. You know what I'm saying? And then like they had just had a baby, and
Woo.
I was talking to him yesterday, and he's like, I did not realize that your entire world can actually change in one moment. He's like,
Yeah.
when I saw that kid, he's like, every other priority, every other perspective, like completely like went out the window because, we like to say we create family focused entrepreneurs. Like that's our goal in life. I don't want to be I don't disrespect anybody. I hustle, I work hard, but I don't want to be the guy that worked 80 hours a week,
Yeah.
hustle, 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 sleep when you're dead, and then you looked up and you didn't know your 18-year-old that grew up in your house, right?
Yeah.
And like that was kind of what he was saying too. And it sounds like you were you thinking about getting out before the baby came, or was it just like that, just like flash? That's it. We got to do something different.
Yeah, what's funny, man, is CIA teaches us that there are these boomerangs. We call them boomerangs. There's these boomerang topics in life. When you're little, maybe even a teenager, maybe even in college, you have these values, these things you care about. But then they're not cool, or they're not hip, or they're not fashionable. So you try to throw them away,
Mm,
but they always come back again. And then you're
mm,
like, no, this is still not convenient to me. So I throw it away again, right? So for me, parenthood was one of those things. When I remember being 8 years old, 9 years old, and being super excited to be a dad someday. But then I got into college or high school, and everybody's focused on education in college and making money, build a career. So I'm like, oh, this dad thing, nobody talks about the dad thing. And I was raised by a stepdad who, wasn't my closest, most loving parent. So I
sure.
would just throw that fatherhood thing away. And then it would
Mm,
come back, right? Now all of a sudden I'm 22 years old, a junior in college, or 21 years old, a junior in college, and here I am thinking about fatherhood again. I'm like, inconvenient. I'm just finishing the military academy. I got to go be an officer. I'm not engaged. I don't want to be engaged. Throw that fatherhood thing away, right? And then CIA picks me up. I'm 27 years old. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go travel the world and drive fast cars, and throw that fatherhood thing away. And then boom, man, you meet the woman who's the right woman. My
mm.
wife, I will never forget the day I knew she was going to be the day I knew I was going to propose. I still can't read her mind. But the day I knew I had to propose was she was on an operation in a covert location I couldn't even know about. I was sitting there watching TV before Netflix was a thing. When I think Netflix was still mail in, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, got the DVDs, baby. Got to send those back. Get the game flying Netflix all in one day, baby. You're ready to
Yeah,
go.
man,
Yeah,
right?
man.
So I'm sitting there watching a DVD, and all of a sudden I'm like, what am I going to do this weekend? Oh, Jihi, my wife, Jihi's supposed to come home. What if she doesn't? Oh,
Mm.
he doesn't come back. I don't only Not only do I not know what I'm going to do this weekend, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And that was so heavy. I was like, I'm in love with this girl. Like, I want to spend my life with this girl. And then boom, the fatherhood boomerang hits me right across the forehead. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh, this is how this thing works.
Yeah, man.
So always wanted to be a dad. And it just took a little while for me to stop being a bonehead and accept that it was my number one priority.
I tell you what's hopeful about that too, as a parent, is like, my kids right now are 13 and 11, almost 12, almost 14. And we are in the thick of middle school nonsense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we had this relationship and then bam, it just changed all at 1 second. But like, it kind of that's a kind of really awesome concept, because it's like, hey man, the values that my kids are getting, the values that I'm, putting into them, like, yeah, they don't want them right now. Dad's stupid. Friends are cooler, but they're just throwing that boomerang, man. I
Exactly
handed them the
right, man.
boomerang, and I'm not teaching them values. I'm handing them a boomerang. I love that, dude. Like, I'm gonna get a shirt, and I'm just gonna have a boomerang on the front of it. So every time I look in the mirror every day, I'm like, all right, throw the
All right, it's
boomerang,
all
baby.
right.
Just throw it's all good, man. As long as they get the
One
boomerang.
day you're going to get hit in the face, and I'm going to get the last laugh, kid.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Dad, I got this big lump on my head. I go, oh yeah, that's that boomerang you threw 12 years ago, son. That's amazing. You do the spy stuff, and you come to CIA, and you have this great career. You're clearly parenting changes your life, and you guys are like, we're out now. Do you just turn in your resignation? I got a speaking contract, and I got to give 4 months notice, and that's not saving the world or whatever you were doing out there. Like how do you do that? Like, how do you? Is it like the mob? You're leaving, are you? You can't walk away, right? Like, how do you do that? Like,
it's
how do you take that step out?
it's an ugly process. And when we did it in 2014. For anybody listening who's a CIA or intelligence buff, CIA has gone through probably the hardest transition in history that it's ever gone through, because it's run into record-breaking attrition since
Mm,
2015. And my wife and I were two of the first young people to leave. We were two of the first like young successful professionals to leave in 2014. And it's just gotten worse since then for a multitude of different reasons. Great resignation, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever it is, all that stuff that everybody's used to, because it's still
yeah.
just a job.
The last 2 years was 20 years of life and history
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
because
yeah.
of everything else. So everything's changing right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
exactly. So leaving was really ugly. They didn't know administratively how to let two undercover young mid-career officers go.
Mm.
How do you just let us walk out the gates and never come back? We're still undercover. We're still lying to the IRS, lying to our parents, lying to everybody about what we actually do.
Mm.
And then how do you clear what we're allowed to talk about? Because now we have to go find jobs. So are
Yeah.
we allowed to say that we had a top secret clearance, or is that classified? Are we allowed to say that we spent the last 7 years working in Washington, D.C., or is that classified? Like what's classified, what's not classified? So it actually turned into about 6 months of unemployment, brother. It was a horrible time. I found
Wow.
my wife and I and our 1 year old son living in the converted garage of my father-in-law's house, which any human being male out there never wants to live in the converted garage of his father-in-law's house,
Amen, brother. Yeah,
right?
man.
And here we are, and I'm trying to make sense of how are we two high-performing former CIA undercover officers, and I'm living in a freaking garage. What did I do wrong with my life to get here? And
Mm.
it was all because of the chaos of how we have a lifetime secrecy agreement, and then we also have a committee that has to review everything we publish, and then we also have the weight of national security on our shoulders, and we left our entire network behind because our whole network was other people undercover. When we signed the resignation paperwork, we left all of those friends behind because we can't talk to
Wow.
them. If we talk to them, we put them at risk because now God and everybody out there knows we're former covert officers. So if we send a text message to Washington, D.C., there's 1,000 web crawlers on that thing. So we just can't do it.
Wow. That's an amazing story, man, because, and I hope that gives a lot of people hope. I think a lot of people feel, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say trapped, but I think it's the best word I can come up with on the spot here. But like, I think a lot of people feel trapped in their past choices, trapped in their commitments, trapped in their responsibilities that you've taken on. Like I was a school teacher. I have a contract for a year to teach kids. I'm a football coach. I had I started a season. I'm not just going to walk out on the kids in the middle of the year. Like, and I think people feel in their jobs, especially if you like went to school, trained, whatever it is, whether it's CIA or a professional job, doctor, whatever it is, people have trouble giving up what they've already got for the chance or the opportunity to get something different, right?
Yeah.
And like yours was like the hardest of those cases, like literally like things that are immovable objects that you had to overcome to make that change. Or sometimes it's like that stock market check where you got to take the dip to get higher up because there's a plateau you've hit, right?
Right.
And like I hope that everybody listening out there, that gives a lot of hope to, because if you can say I'm making a change and you're undercover on another part of the planet with your spouse who is also undercover, and like also like we feel bad about leaving our friends and our family behind when we're trying to do great things out in the world. I remember one time when I was leaving, I was at a head coach, and I was like, I finished the season. When the season was over, when we quit our jobs, I was like, hey man, I'm gonna leave. And he's like, man, it sucks because I know we're not gonna see each other. And we both kind of just sat there and we're like, yeah, man, we're probably not. And we text once or twice a year now. I hope that everybody hears your story and gets hope from that. Like, dude, if you can do it,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys. Even if you don't get the better thing, you can take the opportunity, take the chance.
Yeah, and you know what I think is interesting too is what I learned in hindsight is you feel like you're leaving things behind, but it's really your choice to
Mm.
leave things behind. Everything you've ever done in the past, and this is really relevant to us because it's what has become our business. What we did and what we learned at CIA
Mm.
has become the business that we've built, the unique niche that we've built, the high value proposition that we've built. It's all come from the fact that we used to be at CIA. So often I'm victim to it too. I tried to leave that whole world behind and start new, start all over again. And we
That
all seem
fresh
to,
start we're all sold our whole life.
right.
Get you a fresh start, right?
It's possible, but it's not productive. It's
Mm.
not efficient. Why hit reset? Why erase everything that you've built when you could leverage all of it into some unique advantage, some unique benefit?
A
And
new thing that could
yeah,
be new. Yeah, for sure.
it arguably that's exactly what innovation is. Innovation is not starting something that's never been done before. It's taking two things that have been done before and putting them together in a way that's never been put together.
Hmm.
Right? Art, that's exactly how the human brain works. Creativity isn't the birth of something that's never been thought of. It's the creative combination of two things that no one's ever thought of before. So it was really powerful to me to realize that I didn't need to leave CIA behind. I just needed to apply CIA to business. And that
Yeah.
was something nobody else was doing. And it turns out that that's a niche with a very healthy audience.
That's incredible, dude. People ask me all the time, like, I think when you do anything successfully, people want to know, like, what's your special secret? What's your unfair advantage? What's your magic? Like you've got a Harry Potter wand and you're over here like making up words. But like, it's funny when I look back at our journey to build our first couple businesses. All the skills just came from like what we had already done, like, right, like even to the point where the products we sold, like Jocelyn, my wife, sold lesson plans to librarians. Like she was a librarian, so that's what she did. But even those little the skills that you can lean into that you picked up along the way, like two of my great skills that I picked up over 10 years of coaching football were, one, I know how to break down film. Like I can break down film. Like I can figure out what your plays are and when you're going to call them. Now, can I stop them with my 5'7" fat defensive tackle? No, probably not. But I know where you're going. I at least know where you're going, right? And like, so one thing though I applied that skill to was watching the magician's hands. Like I would watch guys like Russell Brunson or Pat Flynn or John. I would watch these people and be like, well, what are they doing? Well, they're having podcasts, they're having webinars. Oh, what's this thing called an email opt-in? Yeah. And I would break down what they were doing by going through the process. That was just watching countless hours of film over a decade, And then the second thing that I learned how to do was my most grunt work job ever, was when I was a graduate assistant at West Virginia University and Eastern Kentucky University. And guess who had to sit and cut up all the film and all that stupid editing until midnight while the other coaches went home to their families, but I learned how to edit. I knew how to edit video and audio, right? And I would make highlight reels and funny stuff. And like, so that's those two skills probably, it came from a totally different world that I don't even have anything to do with now. Yep. Turned into what we have now, right? So everybody's got God-given skills, talent. Dude, you got wisdom, knowledge. Like you're not changing, you're evolving. You're just doing something different with those skills.
Yeah, I have this awesome business mentor who's a really strong Christian guy in Tampa. Active in the church, active in donating philanthropy level donations to church building and church seating in foreign countries. Anyways. So I'm sitting there and having a conversation with him, and we're going through this exact topic. Like, what were the things that you're just naturally good at? Like, what are the things that you're naturally good at? Which is, to go back to the boomerang example, what you're good at is another boomerang. Because guess what you've been throwing away your whole life? You've been throwing away that thing that you're good at because you're like, oh, I'm good at this. That makes it easy. That must mean everybody's good at it. So it's a worthless skill. Oh, I'm good at talking to people. That's worthless. Throw it away. Oh, I'm good with editing graphic design. Oh, that's worthless. Throw it away. Oh, I'm good at picking the right colors that go into a picture. Oh, that's worthless. Throw it away. Until one day you get hit in the face and you're like, oh, not everybody is good at this. In fact, my natural ability could be a God-given gift, which is what this guy was telling me in Tampa. And it totally transformed my point of view. He was like, think about this, Andy. If you're good at teaching, and I've been throwing away my ability to teach my whole life. I've been throwing it away as something that's silly. He's like, if you're good at teaching, that's a gift that was given to you by God. That means if God's going to give you a gift, he's ordaining you to execute on that gift. And if you do not do what you are ordained to do, then you are leaving behind the one obligation that God has clearly communicated to you. Now, if you want to walk away from that, that's your choice. But God has just given you the unfair advantage. God has just given you the tool that nobody else gets, that other people have to sharpen. You've gotten the sharpened axe. It's up to you to chop something down with it.
Yeah. The First Peter says there's actually a verse that says this in the Bible. It's like it says basically we all have gifts and they're to be used in the service of others. And that's like the only rule of stewardship of any gift you have is like, are you using it in the service of others, right? And people think that's like charitable, and I'm like, nah, man, this is not a charity. You are the worker deserves their wages. It says that somewhere too, baby. So I'm gonna charge for these gifts. I gotta put a price tag on it. I gotta stay warm, dry, and fed, man. We gotta eat. So like, let's talk about that transition now. So you take these gifts, these boomerangs are coming back, and like, did you go straight into online business, or did you try anything else first? Like, was there a gap there before we find like a website and a podcast? And what happened in between?
So there was a website right away for an umbrella company, for an LLC, because I was like, I got to find some way to do something. So I create an LLC. It's my parent LLC to this day. It's called SKB Communications. And I start this business and I'm like, I'm 6 months unemployed. I'm like, what am I going to do? I got to find a way to make income come in. I can't live in this garage forever. So I try and start something, but I don't know what I'm doing. I am literally out there, and I find myself doing the same thing I did at CIA. Now, what people don't know is that CIA is the human intelligence, humans collection arm of the intelligence community, which means our job is to collect secrets from people. We don't, we're not the satellite people. We're not the ones out there collecting signals intelligence. We're not the ones out there doing science experiments and pulling, samples out of the soil. We shake 1,000 hands and turn 1 to 2 people out of every 1,000 people into a traitor against their country. That's our job. So we're used to a lot of failure and a lot of handshakes. That's the nature of the beast. So that was the only thing I knew how to do. So that's what I started doing, shaking hands, hearing people tell me no. So that was the transition. Is I just started doing the one thing I knew how to do. And then before I knew it, we had, all intent for total transparency, brother, we lied and connived our way into a job we weren't qualified for. I found an executive. I shook his hand. We connected. I used every spy skill I had in the book to make him trust me and like me and shortcut his own process. And boom, all of a sudden, I was in an $80,000 a year job.
Wow.
I convinced him to hire my wife at the same pay rate. So we went from unemployed to a combined household income of $160,000, working for somebody else using spy skills. And that was when the light bulb clicked. That's when I was like, wait a second. I just got a job. I don't belong. I don't deserve, because I knew how to have a conversation with a guy. And then for the next 4 years in that corporate world, I wasn't like, I didn't know any. It was a programming, computer, and IT management job. I know nothing about any of those skills. But what I did is I used CIA skills over and over again. I learned, CIA taught me how to learn anything fast. So I applied that to IT. They taught me how to make people allies on my side, so they became advocates for my success. I did that, and then boom, promotions every year for 4 consecutive years. They taught me about fiscal management. They taught me about long-term and short-term operations. They taught me about how to manage people's egos. They taught me about how to communicate effectively up and down the chain. And before I knew it, I was at $125,000 a year with a 20% bonus. My wife was sailing at $95,000 a year. We had 100% remote work. It was a good life, but it wasn't freedom, right? Yeah. It was a corporate existence, which was very demanding and very intrusive to our existing lifestyle.
And building other people's plans or dreams, right? It's like, your dreams kind of they don't go away. I think people like give up on your dreams. It's not really what's happening. It's kind of like that boomerang thing. Yeah. Like if you're going to make the big bucks, if you're going to be all in on a job to make it, if you make it work and get the promotions, that kind of means there's only 16 hours in the day you're awake, right? Yeah. So like, how are you going to work on your dreams when you're working for somebody else? Right?
Exactly right. So that was what did it for us was 4 years of success where we didn't actually learn anything new about the corporation. We just exercised the same muscles that we had used in our agency lives. And that we wanted a second child. We were having a hard time getting pregnant. The stress levels were significant for both of us. Life was good, but it wasn't great. Yeah. And that's when I was like, we've already got the foundation of a business. We can just create a lesson, a presentation, whatever, and see if this is something that we can use to change people's lives. Because if we
see if people want it,
test it out, right? If we can successfully have a proof of concept, a minimum viable product, if we can create one thing that helps one person one time, that means we can create one thing that helps a lot of people a lot of times.
Yeah. We have a saying at Flip Lifestyle. We always tell people after they get their first customer is, if you can find one, you can find 101, you can find 1,001, you can find 1,000,001. 1,000,001 is 0.000% of the freaking world's population. Like, it ain't like you're the special snowflake, the only one that ever had that problem. Yep. So like, man, if you can do it, you can do it. So who was your inspiration to, like, who were you watching at the time to, like, because right now, like, you've got like a podcast, you've got a website, you've got courses, you've got some live stuff. Like, who was the first person, who were you looking at the time? Was there anybody out there in the world you're like, oh man, that guy's doing it. He's selling courses. He's got an ebook. That girl's got a podcast. Like, was there anybody like that? Or were you just like, the website's the best way we can get this out there. I'm just going to intuitively kind of go start a website.
No, I was blessed, man. I wasn't following anybody. I was not a child of the internet because I was a child of covert operations. I did
Mm,
not know anything about social media. I knew very little about the internet. I knew how to log into my laptop and do a bunch of corporate work, but I spent my time working and playing with my kid. If anybody was my inspiration, it was my son. Because
mm,
here's what my son was doing. He was 4 years old. If he walked up to some kid and said, "Hey, do you want to play?" If that kid said no, he went to the next kid on the playground and asked the same question. "Hey, do you want to play?" He might get 5 or 7 no's before the one kid said yes. And it bothered him 0%. His feelings weren't hurt. It didn't demotivate him from trying. And then I would watch him play these games with other kids, and he
mm.
would be like, "Hey, let's play soldiers." And the other kid would be like, "Oh, no, let's play knights." And they'd have this little tassel back and forth. "Well, I want to be soldier. Well, I want to be a knight." And then inevitably they'd be like, "Well, let's play a game where we go back in time as not as soldiers and become knights and then travel back in the future again and become soldiers." I was like, if a 4-year-old can figure this kind of stuff out,
Right. I can launch a website. Come on. Like
yeah.
something. Yeah, man.
And then I was just blessed because I had 2 or 3 people in my community who came across me. CIA gave us permission to say that we were former agency. When they found out my wife and I were former CIA and they saw what we had done, one guy specifically was like, "You need to start a podcast." And I was like, "I don't
That's
even know what a
great.
podcast is." He's like, "It's a podcast. People listen to it." I don't listen to podcasts. I am a dumb dumb. I don't know anything about this. So he put a microphone in front of my face and he said, "Start talking about anything you care about." And I came up with my first lesson right there. It has not been published, but he showed me what a podcast was. And
That's right.
after that, I was like, "Oh, I can do this. I can talk to a recorder. My podcast is short, 15 minutes, one lesson, one nugget each time." I was like, "I can do this without end for the rest of my life."
Yeah,
And
man.
how can I say no to that? I can't, in good conscience, say no to that if I've been ordained to do this.
It's so funny. The story of people I hear about almost always, especially in the last 5 years, has involved or 10 years have been about podcasting. Like I think the luckiest break I ever had was that I found podcasts back in 2012. Like, they were just emerging as a real media force at the time. And like, but even the decision to be a podcaster changed my life. And I mean, it's clearly changed both of our lives because there's nothing like a podcast. Like everybody's like, "Well, I don't know if I want to have a podcast. I want to blog. I want to do this." I'm like, "Yeah, but does your blog get to sit next to someone in their car on the way to work? Does the
Yep.
podcast go to the bathroom with them and be in the corner while they're taking a shower? Does it lay in bed with them at night with their
Yep.
headphones on?" Like there's just something about this medium, right? That is different than everything else. It's like it taps into that primal storytelling DNA that we all have around the campfire. Like that's how humans have always told stories. Religion around is these verbal stories where we're going back and forth. And it creates such an affinity with your audience when you go to create that minimum viable product, when you go to sell the thing. People are ready to buy the thing. It's not like they're reading about it. It's not like they're watching a video on YouTube that they're flipping through TikTok. It's like, no, they spent 30 minutes with you over the last couple of weeks and they heard about your thing and they're like, "I want to see what Andrew's doing. That's
Yeah.
pretty interesting."
Yeah.
So when you launched products, did you find like did it come from the podcast? Did that open the doors? Like what happened there?
Yeah, that's such an easy yes, man. For sure the podcast opens doors. For sure people come from the podcast, but let me go a step further. Let me geek out a second and let me tell you why podcasts work through my lens from what I learned at CIA, right?
Mm,
So at CIA we build relationships. Now there's only two ways to build a relationship with somebody. You have to communicate, but there's only two ways to communicate. You can either communicate non-verbally or you can communicate verbally. That's it. Those are the only two ways to communicate. Well, nonverbal communication is four of the five senses. You can communicate with touch, you can communicate visually, you can communicate with taste and flavor, right? You can communicate with smells. The only way to communicate verbally is with your voice.
mm,
And that means the only way someone can interact with your communication is with their ears. That's the only form of verbal communication. And there's only two ways to communicate, verbally and non-verbally. So as a result of that paradigm, the human brain places a higher default level of trust on verbal communication. It's why
wow.
CIA teaches us a foreign language. They don't teach us to be fluent. The movies lie to you when they try to make it look like we speak 5 languages with perfect accents. No. All CIA knows, all it takes is for you to speak the same mother tongue as someone else to a basic level of proficiency. And what that does is it subconsciously triggers trust in the person
Wow.
listening to you. It's just human nature. So when you have a podcast, just like you were saying, you are triggering the trust center of your customer's brain. If they like what they're hearing, if they believe what they're hearing is true or even relevant to them, they're projecting that authenticity and that authority onto you subconsciously without even thinking about it. It's human nature. It's why you trust your children when they talk to you. You don't think they're lying to you right away. Even if you
Mm,
think they are lying to you, your instinct still tells you, I should trust them. I should trust them. I should trust them, because they're verbalizing their communication to you. It's why
wow.
we all have a hard time detecting when people are lying to us, because our core center is convincing us to trust them first because we hear their communication. No YouTube video is ever going to do that. No
Wow.
picture on Instagram is ever going to communicate that trust like the human voice. So you and I stumbled into this awesome tool that, yes, you're in their ear in the shower and in the car and everywhere else. But what we're not taking into account is the fact that we are conveniently close to them and speaking in the most trustworthy form for the way the human brain works.
Dude, that's so fascinating, because we've done man, that just unlocked my brain a little bit. Like we've done a lot of training over the years. Like we do a lot of courses. Our business functions now though, like primarily on like one-on-one coaching, group coaching, a lot of community stuff. Like we really bring people together, because that's how we find that people find success. But one thing I noticed, I really did notice this a few years ago, and this was just, I guess, intuitively, is a lot of our courses were having low listen rates or watch through rates, right? I was looking at our percentages. I'm like, why are people not watching this, not listening to this? Like, what's going on? And I started looking at it, and a lot of I was looking at different videos and modules, and I noticed something, that Q&As were getting watched all the way to the end, every single time. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And what I determined was the difference was there's no PowerPoint, there's no slides, there's no images, there's no nothing to distract. It was just all those were talking head, whether it was me or one of my coaches or whatever else. And I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I wonder if really it was because, yeah, it was a talking head, but it was talking. And I started changing all of our videos over. The last 2 courses I created, dude, were me talking into a camera.
Yep.
And they've been by far the most watched courses that we've had in years. And I just wonder if that's what it is. It's that there's so much trust there, because it's a human they can look at, period. But then they can look away. They can still listen. They can hear what I'm saying.
It simulates what they do in real life. It simulates what you and I do in real life. My wife always talks about the importance of human connection. And yes, we learned that at the agency. We've also learned that through trial and error as a married couple, right? Human connection doesn't mean we're always holding hands. Human
Mm,
connection doesn't always mean that we're like crying on each other's shoulders after some rom-com. We can have human connection from 1,000 miles apart, without being on like a live video call, just by being on the phone if we need to, right? Because
yeah.
human connection is about being able to share a space and a moment in time with another person. Even
Mm.
if that's a recorded moment for you, it's a very real and present moment for your audience.
Yo, that's deep. That's good, dude.
So we think that a recording is somehow less valuable than a live conversation because we're stuck in our own point of view. You've heard me talk about perception and perspective. From our perception as the content creator, this is only valuable once right now. We're not thinking through the perspective of the audience. There's somebody that's going to find you 2 years from now, Shane. They're going to watch a video that you made 4 years ago, and it's going to change their life today because they
Yeah,
are
that's
building a
crazy.
relation. They are building their relationship with you today, and they're the only one that matters. You and I don't matter. We're blessed to be the business creating life change. The blessing is the person who gets to change their life.
I always say it's like Hansel and Gretel's breadcrumbs, man. You just leaving them. Hansel and Gretel gonna get hungry, son. They're gonna need some bread. They gotta get home, right? So you gotta leave those breadcrumbs behind you, man. It's so funny how you can still have paradigm shifts. You think you're in your business, you know what you do, but like even when you're like wavering on something, like there's so many temptations today with different social media networks and things like that. But like our business plan is anchored at no, we are a podcast.
Yep.
Every other opportunity will come from the relationships that we build through this podcast, whether it's me talking to people, me talking into the mic by myself, talking to our members, whether it's my team now records some of our segments on our podcast, but like, that's where it's all going to be at, because like you said, and like, dude, there's this one lady named Kareem in our community, and everywhere I go, I talk about her because her stories, she was like an immigrant from Guatemala and came here with no English, nothing but a suitcase, ends up starting a 6-figure online business like 5 years later. It's crazy story. But that podcast is always one of our best ones, because when people find it, we always talk about it and people go back and listen to it. And it's just as impactful every time someone hears it for the first time as when we did it. And courses can be that way too. I never even thought about that. Like, it's not about the bells and the whistles and it's the words, man.
Yeah.
Your website, which is everydayspy.com. Okay. So like, you've got all kinds of things on there. You've got like Spy Tribe, Spy School, Spy members, like in here. Like, who is it that you serve in your product area? I know that most of our brands serve, we want to serve as many people as possible.
Right.
And we got to find ways to like pay for that, right? Because
Right.
you know, podcasting ain't free, y'all. And then but like, who do you serve? What do your products actually do? And like, and then how do you kind of think about selling them on the internet? Like, how do you get people to that process? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start that. I'm going to answer those in kind of a different order than you asked them. So
That's fine. No problem.
yeah, so we create products that are shortcuts. That's all we do. If we're not giving you a shortcut or a hack, if we're not giving you a tool that's immediately actionable, it immediately falls off onto the cutting room floor. That's something we're very strict about in our company. It has to be immediately actionable, and it has to be a shortcut to bring you success immediately. If we can't serve you immediately, then we're not serving you at our fullest ability. The second thing that we always ask ourselves is this product going to be a tool that helps us serve the customer to our highest level? Now, every customer is going to have their own tap out place, right? Some people don't have discipline. Some people struggle with consistency. Some people have life changes and their plans get railroaded by life change. That's not something that we can help them through right now. But if we can make a product that serves another product and another product that helps lift people all the way to the top of their game, think about like a college degree. You get your diploma so that you can get your bachelor's, so that you can get your master's, so that you can get your PhD. You can't really go from a diploma straight to a PhD, because the gap is too wide. The level of discipline, the structure, the academic requirements are all too hard. We can give people life hacks to get to the place where they're making millions of dollars a year, working a few hours a week, and hanging out with only the people they like. But we can't take them there overnight. We have to take them there one step at a time so they understand what they're really getting. So those are kind of how we approach that. Now, when it comes to who is that target, who is that one person that we can talk to and get them from zero to maximum success in the shortest period of time, that's somebody who is in our avatar terms, they are making between $70,000 a year and $250,000 a year. And they are able to use the excess earnings to invest in themselves and their own rapid learning. There's somebody who has disposable income, and there's somebody who has the appetite and the understanding that a small investment can result in a large ROI. Now, does that mean we don't serve anybody below or above? Absolutely not.
Sure.
The people that are below $70,000 a year, the first hack that we give them is how to get to $70,000 a year.
Yeah.
Like, we spend a lot of time teaching people who make $30,000, $40,000, $20,000. Like, here are the 4 things you need that you can take. You can use them right now. It was our first ever ebook. It's called Winning the Workplace.
Yeah.
The first thing we ever produced, and still one of our biggest sellers. Here's how you get to $80,000 a year without changing anything, without changing your career path, your current job, nothing. Just 4 tools that spies use. The same things that I was telling you about how I hacked my way into a career. Let's get people to 80 grand. Because you know what happens when you take somebody from $30,000 a year to $80,000 a year? You have a lifetime customer. They will never doubt you again when they see that success. And then boom, it just goes on. And then we also have a very large segment that makes more than $250,000 a year. And the reason that segment loves us is either because we got them there, or because they've learned through the school of hard knocks that our lessons are correct. And they're so wealthy now that they don't have to learn from the school of hard knocks anymore. They can just hire the expert and massively upscale their business, their personal life, their health, their fitness, whatever it might be. So by focusing on our core group, we get a chance to serve outside of our core group at a very high level. But
Yeah.
we are all about scaling. And to scale, you have to know your core audience and you have to serve them at your highest level.
And that what we've learned over the last few years, because we've always been a mass company. We think of Flip Lifestyle a little different than other online business companies a little bit, because that is our mission, is to get people to, like, where they can think about other things, right? Like, that's the mission. Like 60 grand, man, for most people. If you were making 60 grand from home, your family tree has changed forever.
Yep.
Because you're going to have margin in your time at that point. You're going to be able to control that time. You're going to be able to wake up where you want to wake up. And like, so we do spend a lot of time there, but we've also realized there are people who want to go faster. And we can create services for them that can help them go even faster. But like, that subsidizes and gives you money to make the mission possible. Like, if your mission is truly to help everyone, you do have to find that one space. Like, now we've got people in our community, like this one guy, his website, he has 10,000 people paying him like $20 a month. That's crazy. So like, he's figured out that it's a different kind of scale there, right? But sometimes, man, you just got to go all in on one group, and you got to say, these are the people that I can just crush. Like, it's like, I know it's like that one thing you figured out that you can really push them over the edge, and they don't know. But that gives you money to have podcasts and have guests and fly to Washington when a hurricane's coming, and be able to consistently serve the entire audience in a way. And I think people forget about that. They're like, they just totally forget about the ripple effect of everything you do in your business. And how good are those companies that you help when that 70 to 250,000 goes to 500 to $1 million, and then all their companies are better, right? And all their people are learning these skills, and money makes the mission possible.
Exactly. And you tap into their extended networks, and it's the reason I love entrepreneurial business, the reason I love being an entrepreneur, is because it's the closest thing that comes to being a real life spy again. That's it. Like, when you're in the field and you're operating alone, you make the calls, you pay the consequences, you take the risk works out awesome. The risk is a disaster, and you have to fix it. But you're the only one that learns the magic sauce to how you run operations. There's 1,000 other spies out there, and you can come back and you can huddle with them. You can have masterminds, and you can whiteboard, and you can share tips and tricks. But when the rubber meets the road, they're doing their operation, you're doing your operation. And that's a superpower. There's a power in the individuality, and there's a responsibility in the individuality, but there's still a support network in the community.
Yeah.
The only place I've seen that is when you're running your own business, because if you talk to somebody who doesn't run a business, you only have like 60% of things in common.
I don't want to say something right now that's going to make everyone tweet me, but like, I have trouble talking to non-entrepreneurs. I really do. Not like my team or like my customers or people like that who are kind of ingrained in what we're doing, but it's just not the same. I was with a buddy of mine the other day. He's an attorney, and I love this dude. We were friends growing up. We were having a cup of coffee. It was so good to hear about his wife and his kids, and oh my God. But then we started talking about stuff that wasn't entrepreneurship and everything else. And it's just like, this is not the same. I don't want to be in this conversation anymore, because it's just a different world. It really is, man. It's a better world, but it's a different world. Totally different.
It's the core of who you are, right? Like, I can talk about how much I love my kids, and I love hearing about how much other people love their kids. I'm happy to talk about groceries and soccer games and, popular movies and whatever else. It's, more than half of daily life is easy to talk about. But the really substantive stuff, the stuff that gets me out of bed, the stuff that puts a smile on my face when I go to bed, that's entrepreneurial business, specifically because I'm building the legacy for my family through the business. I'm not building a business to be rich. I'm not building a business to be greedy. I'm building a business to enable my children and my wife to have a life I've always promised them, even if I've never said that promise out loud. It was a promise in my heart for them. That's what gets me up. That's what puts a smile on my face when I go to bed.
Yeah, man. This is an interesting, this feels like a core value a little bit here. Like, we sell shortcuts. I love the way you've worded that. I'm probably going to steal it. I'll give you credit twice, and then it's mine. But we sell shortcuts. That's an interesting thing, because like sometimes, like I would actually say ours is a little opposite of that a little bit. Like, because we take people who are truly at the beginning, right? So it's almost like I'm kind of selling you, this is the path that you're not going to trip the most on, right? But that might take you 6 months, right? Let's do this. But like, I love this, we sell shortcuts, because that frames, right, everything you do. Like one of our core values is we tell authentic stories that give people hope. That's one of our core values. So like we sell shortcuts frames everything you do. So how do you deliver, like what is the result you would deliver, first of all, like one of these results, like what's the shortcut to the result? And then how does this frame how you teach that? Like how do you deliver training? How do you deliver content? How do you deliver support? Like what does that mean? Like what does that look like at Everyday Spy in your business to deliver? What's a result you would deliver? And then how do you frame that to the shortcut? Is it training? Is it coaching? Like what is that?
Yeah, so we don't coach. And that is if you want to talk about other core values, right? Like I do not coach. And there's a reason why. CIA doesn't coach us. CIA used to say to us, if we have to coach you, you're not cut out for this job, right? Because inevitably you will end up in the field without a coach with a hard decision in front of you, and you have to make the right call. So we will train you, we will prepare you, we will test you, and we will prove to you that you are capable on your own. So that's how we handle it here. We do the same thing at Everyday Spy. We'll do it. There's three ways people learn. People learn kinesthetically through experience. They learn verbally and like they learn through auditory learning, and then they learn through visual learning. So we create everything in all three spaces. If you like to read, here's a blog. If you like to listen, here's a podcast. If you like to learn through experience, here's a simulation. We thrive on creating simulations. Spy simulations, real world simulations. Every time I get hired to do any kind of event in person, I always bring in a simulation experience-based model. So I can teach them a skill. It's called just-in-time learning. You probably know this from when you were a teacher.
Oh yeah.
Teach them a skill, make them use the skill immediately. There's so much that you learn when you have the opportunity to experience the skill right after you learn it. And then put a bunch of people at a table and let them talk about their own lessons learned. And then repeat the whole process again. Hey, tell me what you learned when I just taught you about surveillance and you just went out and did a surveillance run. What did you learn? Oh, I learned that it's hard to walk in the heat. I learned that the disguise is uncomfortable. I learned that people drive crazy on the road. I learned that it's hard to look in 3 different directions at one time. Perfect. These are all things that they had never learned before. So immediately they have a shortcut to new skills that they never learned before. And then we help them cognitively connect that to other aspects of their life. Where else in your life are you looking in 3 directions at the same time? Oh, yeah. Yes, that's true. I do that with my kids. I try to do that at work. It doesn't really work. Yeah, because multitasking doesn't work. And now all of a sudden we have this open, unblocked neural pathway that we can teach them a shortcut. We can teach them how to prioritize instead of multitask. And boom, life change forever, because they don't ever go back because they've had the experience themselves.
That's a fascinating way. That is a fascinating word. I don't think I've ever heard it. And I mastermind a lot with people. And like, I talk to a lot of people. Like I've never heard anyone say, we sell simulations like that. That'd be the best way to say it. It's like, we have training, we have preparation, like we test you. But then that word simulation is very interesting. And I was kind of thinking like we have seminars, we do live in-person events. And like, I was kind of thinking like, oh crap, I think we're doing that, but we're not formalizing that process of this is a simulation. We teach it and then they use it, but we're not formalizing hey, by the way, I'm teaching you this and you're about to use this. And then now you tell me what you learned from this. Yep. But that like, what a fascinating way to create online business is like, what if we could create simulations, not just courses, not just coaching, even where we're like working through something with somebody. I love that concept because when you call a play on, Friday nights, I would stand on top of a stadium with a bag of Reese's Pieces and a Mountain Dew going, I hope Johnny gets him. You're like calling this play you practiced all week, right? But that's what you're doing as a coach. You created enough simulations where the guy could do it on his own. The girl could do it on his own. I remember this one time, dude, this one team ran this one play. I knew when they were going to run it. It was always this time. We had a signal for it. The quarterback would fake to the strong side and he would roll out to the right and he would have one little receiver slipping out. And I knew it. It was when it was coming. And we practiced, we simulated that so much that week. And I remember when it happened, it was really at the end of the game. I knew they were going to do it. We were crushing the team. It was like shutout. And I was like, this is it. Here it comes. And I couldn't tell the kid that. I just told the other coaches on the headset. And I watched this kid. Now it was like he just told him what the play was. He ran into the backfield, -7 loss and yard loss. Just the ball pops. I mean, just the greatest scenario you could ever imagine as a coach. And I'm sitting there thinking now like, oh, I sold that kid a simulation all week and he learned how to do it. And when it was time to do it, baby, he did it. That's a new framing of online business I'd never even thought of. Like sell them simulations. That's crazy to say that out loud, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because it works, and it works because people get to prove it to themselves.
Mm,
There's nothing you'll ever be able to do to convince somebody of what they're capable of. They have to do it for themselves.
mm,
If you try to sell somebody a skill that they have and they go out and practice it and they fail, they blame you. Natural instinct,
mm.
right? The coach didn't teach me right. The teacher didn't prepare me, right? You've been through it 1,000 times. Every time you got a wrong answer on a math test, were you like, oh, I should have known that? Or were you like, the teacher didn't say that? I don't remember that in
Mm.
the lesson plan. We externalize. It's a natural human instinct for survival. But when you take somebody and you sit next to them and you let them take the test, right? And you're watching over them while they take the test, and then you see the point where they struggle, and you're like, hey, you got this. What do we do at this point? Like, what do we do right
Yeah.
now? What did
Yeah.
you learn?
It's almost like too much coaching and support can even make them have an excuse, because then it's like there's so much scaffolding. If they fall off the scaffolding was loose.
Yeah,
They have something to blame.
right.
Dude, it's fascinating.
So let me
Yeah,
also
man.
throw this out there, and this is me being, very very transparent. The truth is, not everybody out there is the right customer for your business.
Yeah.
So why use simulations as a way of weeding out the wrong customers? Because
Mm,
the wrong customers suck up the most customer service time. They waste the most resources. They are the ones that you risk having put out the worst reviews online. So
mm.
what you got to do is find them early and weed them out. Not
Yeah.
because there's anything wrong with them or wrong with you. You're just not a good fit. It's like everybody you dated before you met your wife. They're still good people. They're just not the right fit to build a family for you.
Yeah. This has implications to this word simulating and the way you're using simulations, even in your activities or your courses, your trainings, or whatever you want to call it, right? The simulation word in the sales process. Like, one of the things I've tried to train our salespeople on is when we do seminars, like we'll have hundreds of people in a room. And of course, we're going to try to sell something. It ain't a charity, right? Like the money makes the mission possible, guys. So we're selling stuff, but we're training, we're teaching, we're just giving so much value, right?
Yep.
But like when we're selling something, sometimes we run into things that we would call objections, like especially online, because you got to deal with objections on your sales page, you got to deal with objections on your webinar, you got to deal with objections. But like sometimes it's not an objection. Sometimes it's like, yeah, you're not getting it. Like this is not for you. And we've got to learn, especially online marketers, like how to redirect people, how to get them off the page, how to get those things to not happen. Like this probably isn't for you. But like by having these simulations in your processes, it allows people to weed themselves out. Like we just incorporated a quiz. You got a quiz on your website, the
Yep.
what's your superpower quiz. And like we've got this quiz that's like, what kind of like online business online product should you do, right? So there's like courses, there's coaching, there's communities like memberships, there's freelancing, whatever it is, right? And there are people who will like do it and they're really resistant, they don't agree with the thing, but they go through the simulation we've created, the thing that will reveal what they can or cannot do, right? And then they're stuck or they don't get it or whatever. There's another simulation we do where we do this research activity in our seminars, where we see like their idea, right? We're trying to create belief in their own idea. I don't want you to believe in flipped lifestyle. I want you to believe in the idea you have for your online business, because you can believe in me all you want, but I ain't gonna pay your bills. Your idea will pay your bills. So we have this 3-step process, takes about 2 hours to do, like through different multiple activities. And at the end of it, there's always like, I'd say 60% of the people in any room we go to are like, holy crap, I really do have a God-given gift. I can do this. But like some people don't. And then my team always focuses so much on the people that don't have their
Yeah.
thing.
Resource drain. Yep.
Yeah, man. And like, guys, they have worked through the process and they may just not have it right now. You know what I'm saying? That's not the person we need to focus on. What about the 180 people that do have the idea? That's the people that need us just in time right now. So you can even take the simulation kind of concept and expand it out. Like that's why I said it's like a core value almost. It's like it can permeate your sales process too, not just your marketing process, right? Like to get people through. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, it makes total sense. And it's a very, I can't take credit for how we strategized our online business. I've got to give that credit to CIA, because our entire marketing strategy is the CIA strategy for human development. I don't know if you're on LinkedIn. Oh yeah, we met on LinkedIn, Shane. I'm
There you
pretty
go.
sure.
Yep.
If you go to my LinkedIn profile, for anybody out there, if you go to Andrew Bustamante on LinkedIn, you will see a graphic design. I just loaded it a few days ago of exactly how we apply spy intelligence collection and apply it directly to how we market. It's a breakdown exactly of how it works. It's a process that we in the Intel world call SADRAT. It's an acronym, SADRAT. It's the entire way that you go from meeting an asset to recruiting an asset, collecting secrets, and then severing that communication, severing that relationship safely. And then it's got subsets and subsets within that about how you go through these different processes. And I'm very, very transparent about this because I want people to understand that what they're learning are real spy tactics. These are the real shortcuts that professionals use to do the impossible.
Yeah.
How much easier is it to sell a course? How much
Yeah.
easier is it to sell a quilt than it is to convince a trusted general to
Yeah.
spy on his own country? It's much, much harder.
Even that's done with simulations. Like, I mean, I don't know a lot about it just from what I've heard you talk about
Oh,
mostly,
yeah.
but like, it's like when you shake the hand, that is the simulation of
Yep.
gaining the trust of doing the thing of whatever the thing is, and in that case, it's like you're convincing the general to do it. In the other case, you're like, I'm convincing you to let me help you and serve you and like do other things, right? So it's like these simulations just permeate the whole thing. Man, this is fascinating. I'm totally, my brain is just going like that. I got hit with a boomerang. That's what happened a little while ago. And then like in this simulation where like I'm sitting here thinking like right now, like, because I have a meeting with I train my speakers in 2 weeks. I've got an event in Chicago, and I know we're going to sit down for like 12 hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, man, I'm just going to put them up in front of the room. They're just going to do this, and but this simulation is so fascinating because this is not how online business owners do it. I think a lot of online business owners who follow some of the bigger names or the kind of the Mount Rushmore type people of like what's marketing online, what's this, that, or the other. It is more like skill based. It's not really simulation. It's like you just follow this, you just do the template, you just do the framework, you just follow the thing, you just do the objections, and then people get to the end of that funnel or whatever, and they're like, oh, but nobody did anything.
Yep.
And that's all your courses are funnels. It's a funnel to get them to success, purchase to success funnel, right?
Exactly.
But like, man, are they doing the things, and are you creating? Like you said, CIA, we will provide the opportunity to get better at these things. Like, are you providing the opportunity in your courses to simulate things in your sales process, in your marketing? Oh, this is legit, dude. This is crazy good, dude.
So it's fascinating, man, because one of my biggest gripes out there is the way that internet entrepreneurship is sold, because it really is sold, and it's sold as a lie to a lot of people. And one of the things that I will very, very honestly tell you is that when I was looking at what you build with Flipped Lifestyle, you're not lying to folks. Like you're setting a very realistic threshold, a very realistic goal with a very realistic plan.
Yeah.
When you're being pitched on, hey, you can be a multimillionaire in a year. All you have to do is learn this, follow this blueprint and get to this 3-step process.
Magic.
Yeah.
Abracadabra.
That is, that's people selling ice cream. That's people selling ice cream. You know what ice cream is not going to do? It's not going to give you nourishment. It's not going to give you strength. It's not going to make you feel good at the end of the day. But will you buy it all day long? Absolutely. And people want their sugar fix. There's a certain value to the guy out there who's literally selling apples, who's like, hey, this is still sweet. It has real nutritional value. It has real fiber. It is natural and wholesome and good for you. And you know what? Will you get a little bit bored eating apples? Maybe, but you're going to feel really, really good. Because once you know how to eat these apples, right, then we're going to move you on to, watermelon or pineapple or whatever else. Like you're going to have this awesome, healthy tree. The guy who's eating ice cream all day long, he's never going to go. He's never going to.
And make no mistake, at this part in the universe, people are coming to your website and they've eaten ice cream. They have bought ice cream like that. Like 10 years ago, people are like, "What is this thing? Am I buying something online?" Like now, it's like, all right, I've eaten like 3 different flavors of ice cream in the last year. My stomach hurts, and I just am not sure if this is even real apples at this point.
Exactly right, dude. Exactly right. And that's one of the reasons why I make sure our company focuses on demonstrable, immediate proof. If you don't, if I give you an apple, do you know what happens? You get a rush and you feel good right away. That's if you eat an apple. It's the biological composition of what's inside an apple. That's why I like using this example. Go out and eat an apple right now. I guarantee you, 15 minutes later, you're gonna feel great. Go out and eat an ice cream cone right now. 15 minutes from now, you're going to feel like crap.
Yeah. Don't just tell them about the thing, make them
Yeah.
eat the thing. And then they know it's good for them. And they're like, oh, where do I spend more money? Here we go.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got this.
because I believe you now, right? I believe that
Mm.
you are actually selling apples. So you just proved what you said.
Have you read Alex Hormozzi's book, $100 Million Offers? You read that book before?
I think
Um,
I audiobooked it, but yes,
oh, it's so good, dude.
it is
Like that
so
was
good.
one of the best books I've ever heard about offers. And it really talks about that, like be so crazy service oriented and authentic with what you actually do.
Yep.
No one would ever question it on the other side. Why would they even question you? You can totally do that now because no one will ever question it on the other side of it.
Yeah.
When you were talking just out, just made me right. Simulation creates true belief.
Yes.
Like we're not trying to just get people to believe long enough to pay it. It's simulation because like our people when they come into our products, like if they know here's the path, right? Like it's like there's never a question of if they're on the path or off the path. They may struggle like with everyone struggles in entrepreneurship, but it's like no, we have simulated you through true belief, right? You've already seen what happens if you do it. Now you know that you're in here, and they have belief in your process. They believe in the product, and now when they make a mistake, like you're out on the battlefield, you make a bad decision, and a building gets blown up or whatever. It's like crap, but it's like okay, but I know why and I know what I got to do. And we've simulated this before. And we've even simulated to the point of like, what happens when you fail? What happens when you make
Oh yeah.
mistakes?
Oh yeah.
Like how do you recover? That's another thing too. Like, I don't think a lot of online gurus or experts or people who make the stuff we make. What do you do when your people get off the railroad track? What happens when there's a failure? It's all success all the time.
I don't want to talk about it. It's going to impact conversion. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. You might. I would 100 times out of 100. I would rather see my conversion rate drops. I would rather see conversion drop because I'm being authentic, because that's going to increase the lifetime customer value.
I used to do this email. I stopped doing it because just my time got away from me. But I used to do this email that was called 5 Fails Friday. And people loved it. I would write an email to my list and it was just like, here's my life catastrophes last week. The kid pukes in the car, the whatever. People loved that, dude. And it makes me want to almost feel like we need a community failure call every week where people just come and like, because then it's like that simulation. It's like
You're
you hear someone do it
anymore.
Yeah, man. That's really good, dude. That's really, really good. So what are your goals, man? Like what are your goals with your online business going forward now that you've gotten you're starting to get out there. You're on these podcasts, you're growing, you've got your avatar tightened up, and you're like, wow, we know who we're serving and how we're serving them. Like what are your goals? Is it all legacy goals? Is it missional goals? Like what are your goals going forward?
Yeah, so one of the things that is also very, I don't know if it's unique, but I'm very transparent about, is that I am an empirical person. I love changing lives. I love helping people. But if I can't measure it, then I'm not serving everybody to my highest standard. Because everybody we're talking to right now, Shane, they're either an entrepreneur or they're planning to become an entrepreneur. You keep saying money makes the mission happen. I don't want to dilly-dally around what my goals are. My goals are all empirical. I'm aiming for a $20 million company valuation before I'm 48 years old. I'm 42 years old right now. We are at a multi-million-dollar valuation right now. It's a single-digit millions. It is not double-digit millions. So we know that we've got runway ahead of us. My goal is also to continue meeting what's known as the Fibonacci sequence of growth. I don't know if you've talked about that or if you've heard of that.
I have not.
The Fibonacci sequence of growth is it's a natural sequence that that God programmed into flowers and trees and everything else, and it has been empirically proven to be a demonstration of company health as well, especially in the digital world. It's a sequence that tells you how much you should grow year to year, and it's not small, right? The first few numbers in a Fibonacci sequence are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Each of those numbers is a multiple of the previous year. So if you do $10,000 the first year, you should expect $10,000 the second year. But then you should expect 2 times 10 the third year, 3 times 20 the fourth year, right? 5 times 60 the fourth year. And you see how it keeps going. It's a fascinating number. And we are living proof that it does apply to a digital business. We've hit our Fibonacci sequence for the last 3 years. If we hit that, that means we're going to generate 5 times as much revenue by the end of next year than we've generated this year, which is a terrifying, absolutely terrifying number.
Yeah, man.
But we have a goal and we're going to aim for it, right?
Wow.
So we measure everything empirically. And then the goal, man, is to be 48 years old. My son's going to turn 15. My daughter's going to turn 11. and we're going to turn the entire company over to a C-suite of executives that we've trained,
There
and
you
then
go.
we're gonna retire early. We're going to do what it takes to keep the business afloat and keep serving people, but
Become the owners. Become the owners, baby.
yeah, but
Become those directors.
we're gonna enjoy those last few years we have with our children before they become adults.
Wow, what great goals, man! But dude, this is amazing, man. I got to get you back because I mean, I feel like we've only scratched the geek surface of what we're talking about online, dude. But I love your podcast. I love your website, and I just totally support everything you're doing out there, man. Tell everybody real quick where they can connect with you online, and at your website, what you're doing with the show, and where would you like for them to reach out to you if they got some
Yeah, absolutely.
follow ups to do, man.
If you're listening right now and you can safely pull over the car, just stop what you're doing, pull out your phone, and go to everydayspy.com. That's the place to start. Go to everydayspy.com and you will find your way to everything I do. If you're a podcast listener and maybe you're on a train and you can't really stop right now, go ahead and visit my podcast. I have a top 1% podcast called the Everyday Espionage Podcast. Everyday Espionage Podcast. You'll find me on every platform out there, and I'm happy to teach you there. And if you're a social media type, just hit up at Everyday Spy on any social media platform, and you will find your way to me on Instagram, YouTube, or any place else in between.
Andrew, appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on the show
It's
today,
been
dude.
great, and absolutely, sir. Take care.